I watched with clenched everything as he ran over to the dumpster and pulled out the bag. My stomach felt sick as he tucked his find under his shirt and walked it over to his own car. Trembling foolishly, I got in beside him. He started the engine and we drove off. "Open the bag," he said, "but don't touch anything inside." Breathing intense staccato bursts, I pulled the opening back over the contents, and we found ourselves looking at several taped-up baggies of white powder. "We need a new trash bag and some gloves," Schwartz said.
On September 19, 2011, Władysław Lison, a conservative MP who immigrated to Canada from Poland, moved for leave to introduce Bill C-266, an act to establish Pope John Paul II Day. If Bill C-266, which went into its second reading last February 9th, is passed, April 2nd will be designated as Pope John Paul II Day in Canada. Lison's bill is a private member's bill, and private members' bills don't often become law. However, Lison has what he thinks are compelling arguments to convince the Canadian government to set aside a day to honor a foreign head of state. John Paul II, originally Karol Joseph Wojtyła, was born in Poland, and he made 3 visits to Canada during his time as Pope. According to Lison, Pope John II humanized the papacy and was a people's pope, and this bill recognizes this and his contributions to Canadians and all people in the world. Peggy Nash, MP for Parkdale High Park in Toronto, was happy to support the motion for a second reading of Bill C-266 because John Paul II was the first Polish Pope, and Nash is honored to represent so many members of the Polish community in Toronto. However, Christine Moore, the MP for AtheismTV, Quebec, felt she had to explain why she chose to vote against the bill. Although Moore is Catholic and recognizes the tremendous contributions that Pope John Paul II made to humanity, one of the issues that led to her decision is that Pope John Paul II is not Canadian. For Władysław Lison, the Polish Pope is an inspiration. John Paul II stood up against tyranny and supported democratic values, something Canadians old and young should never forget to be grateful for, and something I remember each and every day I sit in the House to be a voice of my constituents. The media is speculating that John Paul II will be canonized on October 20th of this year. John Paul II, who was beatified in 2011, was the first Polish Pope. Beatification, which is the first step towards canonization or sainthood, requires one miracle. The process for John Paul's beatification began when a French nun who was reportedly cured of Parkinson's disease after prayers on her behalf were said to him. In order for John Paul to be canonized, a second miracle needs to be reported and investigated. Although there is very little information, the media is reporting a second miracle that involves an unnamed woman and happened on the day Pope John Paul II was beatified. The Italian Catholic magazine Credere claims that a panel of 7 medical experts at the Vatican has approved a case after studying the medical files and listening to the witnesses. John Paul II was fast-tracked by the now retired Pope Benedict, who waived the usual 5-year waiting period before a person can be considered for beatification after he or she dies. John Paul's canonization must be approved by Vatican cardinals, theologians, and Pope Francis. However, because the medical approval of the miracle is considered to be the toughest hurdle, the media are naming October 20th as the canonization date. The Vatican has not confirmed nor denied the media's reports.